hope you already know this, but no one productivity tool is going to solve all of your problems. That would be like expecting a band-aid to fix a bullet wound. But even if a productivity tool is just a band-aid, band-aids still serve a purpose for smaller things like paper cuts. Plus, band-aids can still be fun. This band-aid has a unicorn on it. That's fun. And productivity apps can be fun too, as long as you realize that they aren't gonna fix your productivity bullet wounds. Now that you know what to expect from them, let's get into my favorite productivity tools of 2021. If you're new here, hello, nice to meet you. I am Brittany, the founder at workbrighter.co, and we are a digital media company and community to help you escape hustle culture, redefine productivity, and better balance work, play, and rest. And here are 9 productivity apps for doing that. First, let's talk about the app I use the most, Notion. If you have watched any of my other videos about Notion, you know that it is where I do most of my work at this point. It has replaced, or at least partially replaced, at least a dozen apps that I used to use. Notion is where I do all of my day-to-day tasks and to-dos. It is where I do the bigger picture strategy thinking, and it's where I do everything in between. Notion is where I plan the content for my business, like this video, actually outline and write the content for my business, like this video, and it's also where I do all of my journaling and tracking for my physical and mental health. It is also where I take notes on the books and courses I'm learning from, and a lot more. I think that the last time I checked my RescueTime score, I spent about 6 to 8 hours a day in Notion, which is basically all of my working hours, and honestly most of my waking hours, because chronic illness life. So obviously, highly, strongly recommend. And of course, if you are ever looking for Notion templates based on my own workspace and workflows and productivity routines, check out the Workbrighter with Notion bundle in the Workbrighter shop. Next, I want to talk about a habit tracker that I started using fairly recently called Everyday. If you've seen Workbrighter's videos about habit building, you know habits are something that I take very, very seriously. I am super passionate and super intentional about my habits. And I do have a habit tracker in my bullet journal that I update every night, but I was also looking for an app tracker that I could use to cross things off in the moment. And I had some very specific wants for this. Finding an app that met all of the needs I was looking for, it was a journey. In fact, this journey took so long that I'm pretty sure at the start of this search, Everyday actually didn't meet all the requirements that I was looking for. But this search went on so long and I kept trying things I didn't like that eventually Everyday added the one feature I was looking for, and I gave it a try and I loved it. So Everyday has everything that I was looking for in a digital habit tracker. It has versions for both Mac and iOS so that I could check off a habit no matter where I was completing it. It has the ability to mark off habits for a day once that day is already ended, which is super important to me as both a night owl and a forgetful person, because this way if I ever forget tracking habits for a day, I can still go back and track the habits I actually did but forgot to track. And a lot of times I am doing things like filming this video after midnight, and so digital tools count it as the next day, but like I'm still, I guess, living in the past. And the final thing that I was looking for is that it had an iOS widget for iOS 14. And that is important to me because we can do a whole other video about this, but using widgets is one of the ways that I have found is effective for me to spend a lot less time on my phone. The one thing that I would love for it to have that it doesn't yet is integration with iOS shortcuts as well. Because once an app has integration with shortcuts and widgets, you can make it so much more powerful than it already is. And if something integrated with shortcuts and the voice assistant that shall not be named because I don't want to accidentally activate yours, that would be able to keep me off my phone even more because I'd be able to check off habits without even picking it up. But I have hope. I have patience, especially since Everyday was one of the most full-featured apps that I was able to find. And so if they continue that first place thing, I'm sure shortcuts are on the way. That's hard to say. And if you're interested in learning more about this search that I took to find the perfect for me app, about the criteria that I created for the search, I encourage you to check out Tool School in the WorkBrighter shop, because that goes through how to find the app that actually meets your needs when it comes to anything, instead of just getting distracted by shiny object syndrome. It just walks through my overall process for choosing technology. All right, next let's talk calendars, and that is also something that has changed for me recently. Until 2020, I was using the app BusyCal on both my iOS and Mac, and it was great for what I needed it for then. But then 2020 happened, and the two features that were the most relevant to me and that I was really using BusyCal for were traffic updates for event locations and weather. So once I wasn't going outside or going to events anymore, I figured, why not look at other apps? And as those two features were becoming less relevant, time blocking was becoming more relevant. I've never been someone who really time blocks in their digital calendar, but as all of the days started blurring together, it was something that I decided to try again, and it was really working for me. So I started looking for a calendar app that made that easy, and I found Woven. Woven is an app that I mentioned in my last video as well, and it is just something that I'm absolutely loving lately. And it is especially perfect for time blocking because they have this feature where you can create appointment templates or event templates and then just easily sort of drag them into your calendar instead of creating the same type of event, like write blog posts over and over and over. So weekly planning in Woven, it just takes a few minutes with all of the templates for the recurring tasks that I need. So that is the calendar tool that I am using on the Mac, but like I mentioned before, I love iOS 14 widgets and they do not have one yet, so I'm using a different calendar app on iOS, and that is Fantastical. I don't actually really use the calendar on my iPhone for anything other than checking my events for the day as soon as I wake up in the morning, just getting a quick glance. I don't use notifications, I don't even really go into the event details, and so I was looking for an iOS app with a really great widget, and I like the at a glance version that Fantastical offers. Now that my calendar is out of the way, let's talk another productivity staple, email. To keep email under control, I am using a combination of the app Spark and strong personal boundaries. I do have it downloaded on my phone, but I don't quote unquote check email there. I only have it there hidden away in the app library in case I ever need to bring something up on the go, like a shopping order confirmation or something like that. I've learned from experience I need those. So I mainly use Spark and email in general on the Mac. And in Spark, I can have all of my multiple email accounts added between businesses and personal stuff. All of the rules and filters that I have set up in Gmail automatically transfer over to Spark when I set it up. And I can pin the most used folders from all three of the accounts in the sidebar, which is really easy for just checking the most important stuff and not getting dragged into reading things like interesting emails and newsletters when I shouldn't be doing that. It honestly has more features than I need. Like, it has snoozing email if that's your thing. I try to avoid doing that just since I know that it's easy for me to get in a cycle of snoozing and snoozing and snoozing. But I do like to use the schedule email feature since, like I mentioned before, I'm a night owl. Sometimes I'm checking email at night, but I don't want my replies to go out until other people are awake. And I also use the email templates for things like frequently asked questions I get from WorkBrighter customers and stuff. And one thing that I like, even though I don't use it yet, is that it does have team features. So that means that when the WorkBrighter team does start to grow, I won't necessarily need to look for another email app. So Spark has everything that I currently need, as well as a few things that I can see myself needing in the future. It's great. Whew, all right, just a few left. Now let's talk about time tracking. And remind me in the comments, I need to do a separate video all about how I do time tracking because I think it's different than most people. I don't actually do any type of work where I necessarily need to track my time. Like, I don't bill any clients hourly or anything like that. But as someone with ADHD and a lot of time blindness, I just find that the tracker has been really helpful for helping me be intentional about where my time goes. First of all, starting the tracker makes me sort of force a decision to be intentional about how I'm going to spend my next hour or so instead of just staying in what I like to call nothing time land. And number two, if I tend to get lost in what I like to call a time black hole, I can look at the tracker and be reminded of what I said I was going to be doing. So sometimes if I accidentally get distracted and forget what I'm doing, I'll stop the timer, see what it was, restart it, try again. And there are other times where I get really into the zone working on a task that I'm actually supposed to be working on, and the timer up in the corner of my computer reminds me that, hey, you've been working on this for 2 hours now, maybe it's time for a break. So I use Toggl's Mac app for the majority of my time tracking, but their iOS app doesn't have the deepest integrations with some of the things that I mentioned I was looking for earlier, like shortcuts. So on the iPhone, I actually use Timery, and so that is actually a Toggl client, so it syncs to all of my Toggl data. It's not a separate time tracking tool. It is just an app that lets you control your Toggl data. And in addition to tracking my time, I also track my productivity and some other personal stats. And for tracking my productivity, I use RescueTime. It is a Mac app that's kind of like Screen Time, but a lot older and more advanced and just overall better than Screen Time. It lets you customize everything, unlike the built-in reports in your devices, and you can categorize all of the different websites and apps that you use in a totally custom for you way based on how productive or distracting they are. And then based on, like I said before, these totally custom for you categorizations, it creates a daily score for you on how productive you were per day or per week, per whatever. It also has some other features like blocking certain websites and setting goals, but I can't tell you much about them because I haven't explored them yet. And the final app that I want to talk about is another tracker app. I don't really know what to call it other than a personal tracker, but that is exist.io. It's kind of like an aggregator of all of my personal stats everywhere else. Exist can integrate with my things like my calendar, my email, my Fitbit, the weather, a bunch of more stuff too. Plus, you can rate your mood or your day and add custom tags, which is what I use to track things like what exercises I do and just a few other things that help me learn a lot about my productivity and, of course, my self-care. And the really awesome part about Exist, which is why I don't do this tracking manually somewhere like Notion, is that in addition to tracking all that data for you, it also analyzes it and looks for correlations and trends, and it is so cool. And that has been so great for understanding how my energy and my chronic illness and my mental illness impact things like my productivity and my work. So those are the apps that I am using right now to stay productive, and now I want to hear from you in the comments and let me know what are some of your favorite productivity apps right now. And of course, remember, productivity is important, but it isn't everything, and working brighter is about recognizing that above all else. That's why a lot of these apps for productivity that I mentioned also bleed into things like tracking intention, and my health and self-care, because it does all go back to my productivity in the end. Too much of the traditional productivity advice, especially all of the work smarter stuff of hustle culture, assumes that there's nothing else going on in your life other than work. Nothing going on that could possibly impact your work. That is not the reality. If you watch my other videos, you know how strongly I feel about this. Working brighter instead of smarter is about learning how to balance your productivity with other things like your rest and your self-care. So if you want to learn more about how to do that, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and comment letting me know what your favorite productivity tools are. If you want to hear more about how you can do more than work smarter, get our weekly newsletter by checking the link in the description. And if you're in a binge mode mood, here are some other videos about tech and tools from Work Brighter that you might want to check out next. Bye for now, and have a brighter week.